Welcome to An Aries and Pisces Walk Into a Coffee Shop, the podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Bridget, she, her.
And I'm Tiffany, she, her. This is a podcast where two friends let go of perfectionism and talk unedited. You can find us at the links in our show notes.
Support the show by buying us a coffee. Also, subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Here we are.
Hi.
Hello.
So right timing. I was thinking about it.
Tell me all about it.
Because of you, texted me about how you were doing your solstice ritual on imbolc, basically.
Yes.
And saying that you were doing the mind frame of this was the time to do it. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant to text you back, and I don't think I did. But I was thinking about how beautiful it felt that when we hit imbolc, which is like that cross holiday of like starting to welcome the light back in spring, you were doing like a winter solstice ritual. I'm not exactly sure what you were doing, but you were doing winter solstice stuff.
I'll tell you what I was doing, and I think it's going to feel...
And when you told me that, it felt like what a beautiful way to like celebrate a hard time that we usually have. Because I know you're like me, winter's hard. Mm-hmm. And it felt really sweet that you were taking time to acknowledge winter in a time that felt doable. Because in winter, sometimes it's too hard. And as we're like, it's really cold and snowing and whatever, but the days are getting longer, noticeably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just felt like a really beautiful, like, love letter to a really hard time to be like, I'm acknowledging you exist and you happened and I'm on my way out of it. And that fed into this momentum that I needed to do these tarot readings I had promised people as like a gift. And I was feeling really guilty because literally I was like, hey, like, for your winter solstice gift, I would like to give you this card reading. Or, hey, for your birthday, I'd like to give you this card reading, which was right after the holidays. And then the world and my personal life and chronic pain and whatever. And I just kept on not doing it and feeling guilty about it. And then finally, I got around to doing my winter solstice reading for one of my friends that ended up being an imbolc reading. And I sent it to her and she was like, you are such a powerful witch. I was spiraling today. I needed this so bad. It's exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't know what to do tonight, and now I do. And she did like a whole thing for herself based off that card reading. And I was like, oh, Bridget does know about right timing. It happens when it happens.
I got chills.
Anyway, so that's right timing on my end.
Oh my goodness.
Bridget,
wow.
Please.
Thank you.
Fill in the gaps.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I love, oh gosh, I went through so much in my head over this too, of the, like guilt and shame of it all. Like, we had these grand plans for the solstice, and then, like for all of these different reasons, it got rescheduled, and then it got canceled, and then I got sick for almost a month, and like, just like all of these things. And then I had prepared myself so well, I think, for this.
Was that a cat meowing?
Yeah, John.
A baby watching birds?
Oh, yeah. She so Chloe came up and she's on the window seat at the front window up here, and there's crows outside, and I guess she's got some things to say about them.
Did she seem upset, or did it seem like they were kindred?
I'm unsure, because oh no, I'm hearing her now. I'm hearing Ingrid running around. We got cats doing everything. Well, cause like, Zero and her got in that fight, so
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if she was still, like, pissed off,
upset.
and I wasn't sure if they were fucking with each other underneath the door, but they're not. I think she's just having some things to say to the crows.
Do you
I
think she's having a bitch fest where she's like, "And then this happened, and then"
don't very well
That's gonna
could
be my
be.
headcanon. I just like the
Oh,
idea of Chloe being friends with crows. It seems
I
correct.
I also love this, and I love that now that is going to be integrated into her lore, and
Yes.
I cannot wait to see how that unfolds. This is gonna be good, thank you.
Yes, my absolute pleasure.
Okay, so where was I? I was preparing for the winter solstice.
Yeah.
Um, and I was doing it in a way where like I've never, we've done
Mhm.
things together for like winter solstice stuff before.
Yeah,
I've
we've had
like
some
kind
gatherings and, like, some light ritual.
yeah, and I've kind of done that like a little bit for myself, maybe very casual.
Mhm.
I think but this year it felt like it was like, oh, we're like getting together and gonna do big magic.
Mm.
And I prepared, I made these little offerings from dried lavender that was from my garden this year, which was the first time I like grew it and harvested it. And I made these little bouquets and I listened to June Hymn by the Decemberists when I made the
Oh,
bouquets. And that to me that's very like sunshine, summer.
yeah.
It was that like that warmth that I needed
Mhm.
um when I was making those. And then I also had prepared essentially like the way that I do my weekly burn ritual
Mm, mhm.
during my like weekly review where I will write something that I am grateful for, something I'm like calling in or fostering, and then she's like, I'm sure none of that's gonna come through on the
I
mic,
can
but
hear it.
okay, okay.
I'm delighted.
Oh, I hope having a
Oh,
good time.
hi.
Um, so what is it? Something that I'm grateful for. Oh, something that I'm releasing and then something that I'm
Mhm.
calling in. And I was like, "Oh, I could do that just in terms of like for the whole year to
Oh,
close out
yeah.
the year and then like what I'm calling in for this coming year." And so I was like so prepared. I had it all saved up in a Notion
Oh,
page and I had it saved in my favorites like on my sidebar. I just hit my tooth with my mug.
you're so tough.
Woo! Um, Also, I feel like this mug is maybe timely for this discussion. It's
Oh, yeah.
the Sansa Stark sigil.
Mhm.
Um, so oh, where am I? Oh, so that has been in my sidebar
Oh, yeah.
for all this time, and I keep seeing it and being like, "Oh shit, what do I do with that now?" Because those plans didn't happen, but I was like, "This still all is very relevant, and
Yeah.
I want to do it." And so the other night, I found myself with a few minutes, and I was sitting here, and I was like, maybe I was like clearing things out of my Notion. I don't know what I was doing. I think I was cleaning up my sidebar. I was like,
Mm,
there's too much
mhm.
shit in here. And then I was like, what do I do with this ritual? And I was like, oh, well, I should just do it now. But then I had all those thoughts in my head of like, no, it was for that. And then, like, what do I do with it? And then I was like, having doubts about doing magic right, or like,
Yeah. I
feeling
do
like,
know.
oh, I need to do some big thing. And then
Mhm.
I looked at it and I was like, no, Bridget, you don't need to do some big thing. Do whatever feels good for you. And that is the right thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, then that's easy. I'm going to do what I do all the time for myself. I'm going to I'm gonna pull a card. I'm gonna pull
Yeah.
a card and I pulled like the most perfect card to go with it. Of course, I pulled it from the Pythia deck and I
Mhm.
was like, of course, this is exactly right on point for all of this stuff. And then I physically wrote down all of the things that I had typed on my little paper, and I burned it. And I was like, this, that just felt so good to me. And it felt like, I guess it did feel like the right timing because, like, I hadn't planned it. I even sat down and tried to talk myself out of it.
Mhm.
Like, this was something that I should plan
Yeah.
for some specific time or date. But then I was like, no, like, this is when it feels right. And I'm here. I have the time and the space and the capacity. And so, like, let's just do it. And that was cool. And I think it's even cooler, like, leaning into the I know this works for me, and
Yeah.
I like doing it. So why not just let myself have that and that be enough?
Yes. Let
And
yourself
then
have that. It is
yeah,
enough.
yeah, and then I put the little bouquet on my altar when I burned it.
I'm so proud of you. And this is so relatable. I do the exact same thing where I'm all in a tizzy because I didn't prepare the way I wanted, or a time period had passed when I meant to do something and I didn't. And I get very in my head about, yeah, doing things the right way. And then when I let go of all of that and just trust myself, it feels really good. And or I get some amazing feedback from people, like what happened with the tarot reading.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm just like, oh, could have wasted so much fuel by like spiraling out of being like, because like I definitely had I was actively working on not shaming myself for not getting to that card reading, especially because I know that friend understands. Like they
Mhm.
weren't upset or holding me to it or feeling away. So I was kind of trying to lean into that. But it was hard. Like I had to, like, the shame kept on popping up, and I would have to give myself the pep talk being like, it's fine. You know that you care about that person. That person knows that you care. You're going to get to it. Time isn't real.
It is literally, we put this stuff is all made up. Deadlines, dates, anything, it's all made up.
And like I enjoy observing the rituals and paying attention to the phases of the moon because it does ground me in a
Yeah.
cycle, which is helpful. But time isn't really real.
Yeah.
Especially like this friend also thinks that. So I'm just like, you know, I it was just like a lesson to a lot of past versions of me where I felt like I had to beat myself up out of some sense of virtue, like I was atoning for something all the time.
Mm.
And it was just a big lesson in, no, this friend needed that reading that night. Like that was the dark night. That little, pinprick of light coming through because I had the wherewithal to be like, you know what? I'm tired and don't want to be perceived. I'm staying in tonight. I'm not going to overextend myself. I'm going to get really quiet and stare at the ceiling. And then I was just like, oh, I'm going to do a tarot reading. That's going to feel good. And it ended up being perfect timing.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's very, well, to repeat what you said, let yourself have that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think
Hmm.
this is another great example of that. When we listen to ourselves, when we trust ourselves, when we allow ourselves to have and do what we need in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
then the ways that affects the other people in our lives as well. And that that can mean I don't do this thing for a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that is. It's like it's okay that, like
It's been wild to like allow myself that. The last handful of months have definitely been a lesson in letting go of that like self-flagellation.
Mm.
Um And it's so confusing how deeply ingrained it is. Because, like, to go back to something we talked about previously, like, I wouldn't treat anyone else like that.
Yeah.
I don't
Right.
think there's anything virtuous in that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I have this really deeply ingrained pattern of, well, I'll punish myself before anyone else even gets a chance to think something negative, let alone punish me. And I'm like, what? No. I'm trying to take it easy and like pursue pleasure. Like the beauty path is the way. Like I don't have time for whatever that is.
Same.
And Ingrid agrees because she is a big melty puddle in my lap, just purring away, paw up over my arm, so happy. Yeah, we're just gonna relax. Last night, after I did all my tarot readings and stuff, I did the thing of like, oh, I should. And then I had a bunch of chores and things that I thought I should do. And I was like, or it's late and you already did your tarot readings. So, like, go lay down. And I did
Mm.
to read before bed. And I was on the couch and Ingrid came and laid on my arm and passed out so hard, turned into a big puddle. And Bridget, she started suckling in her sleep for
Oh.
like 3 minutes straight, just tongue out, suckling, passed out in my arms. Oh, like a baby.
The babyest.
A
Oh.
grown lady acting like a baby. It was so cute.
I love that.
And it's always
Oh.
my favorite because she typically will wake herself up by suckling. Like she'll suckle for so long and she'll be making all these mouth sounds that she like wakes herself. And she always she always does this cute little tongue flick where it's like her tongue isn't in the right place in her mouth, so she has to like readjust. She looks all soft and bewildered, like, who woke me up? What was that?
Oh.
You know that about you? Yeah, you're so cute. Ugh.
They're just babies.
What a good familiar.
Oh, I'm having real hard in my head. Bridget, you don't got anything to say.
I thought that might be happening. I saw the look happen.
Oh no, the look. There's a
Yeah.
look.
It's a slightly far away look that you get,
Oh
which lets me know
no.
that you do, in fact, have thoughts in there.
Oh
So thank you
no.
for telling on yourself.
Ah, I have a tell.
I mean,
Um,
same. I also have that. And I didn't realize how often I did it until I was around my partner, who's very attuned and um, has a very loud energy. So, like, they'll notice me, like, go away or get far off or start thinking about something. And then I'll notice them noticing. And then I'm back and I'm like, what just happened? And they're like, hi, you were just far away. And I was just looking at you. So I apparently also have a tell. And I don't know if I always had a tell and everyone just ignored it, or if my unmasking has happened such that now when I am having that internal experience, it's like reflected in my face. I don't know if I used to keep that secret or not, because I don't remember anyone ever bringing it up really.
but I also maybe were the people that you were around not necessarily that in tuned or aware
Exactly.
to notice that anyway.
That's what I'm curious about. Or is it like considered polite, quote unquote, to ignore that? Because I've noticed that a lot, that people just like politely ignore a bunch of things. And I'm like, we all saw
Mm.
that though. Yeah, like this is fine. Or like, I don't know. It's starting to explain a lot about my life the more I think about, because I just kind of always assumed I was wrong. when something was
Mhm.
up with me. But now I'm
Mhm.
thinking like, nah, it's like the paradigm and like the societal norms that are
Mhm.
backwards and
Yeah.
not connecting. So I'm like thinking about it more and more and like telling my inner younger selves, being like, no, we were right. That was weird.
Mhm.
And like,
Mhm.
people should have been paying attention and adults were acting a fool. And like, it wasn't us.
Yeah. That is so yes.
Yeah.
Yes, hard same.
Because when you grow up with all of these authority figures and peers acting like it's normal, you feel crazy.
Mhm.
Because it is normal, but it shouldn't be.
Mhm. Mhm. And this is why we're here and not trusting ourselves. Um, Casual.
We're so
Uh,
trustworthy.
this is good
Turns
for us,
out.
breaking this shit down. Yeah. Um, I I wanna go back to masking and unmasking.
Yeah.
I feel like this is something I asked you about before, but I still don't feel like I have a good handle on it. Have we
Okay.
talked about it on here?
I don't know.
I
Maybe,
don't
but I'm not
I f
sure.
I feel like I think it feels like one of those things that's just, like, slippery in my head.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't, like I haven't been able to, like, grasp onto it and really understand, like, what it is or, like, a solid, like, examples of it that I
Okay.
can, like,
Oh, okay.
go.
So you want to like, okay. Let me think. I think I can come up with it for you, actually.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
an example of how you have masked around me.
Okay.
Um, there's been times where I know your internal experience is very hard. You're either having a lot of panic or a lot of pain,
Mm. Mm.
but you're doing the thing where your body posture and your face is still and you're saying the words, but it's not matching like what's actually happening until you reach a breaking point. And then maybe your eyes tear up or your voice wavers. But up until that point, you're just like, I need A, B, or C to happen or else. Like, I feel it, like, I'm going to have a panic if this thing doesn't happen. Or,
Mhm.
like, um, there was a point really early on in our relationship where you were walking up the stair, trying to walk up the stairs, being the operative word, because you were dealing with a lot of physical pain. And the first couple of stairs, your face was completely like stone faced. And you were walking up the stairs, and then just really quietly, you like said, this hurts a lot. Like, I don't know if I can make it up these stairs. And then your face broke a little bit where you like looked a little upset. But I knew your internal experience was way more in pain than what you were actually letting on.
Okay.
That's masking. You're masking that this thing is internally happening and it's not getting expressed because you're holding like this facade of like, I'm okay, everything's okay. I don't want anyone else to make a big deal, but like
Uh-huh.
something big's happening in here.
Uh-huh.
Or for me, part of my masking was the fidgeting, for example.
Oh,
I
yeah.
never would have openly been just like playing with something out in the open because I wasn't like supposed to be fidgeting. I wasn't supposed to be distracting other people.
Mhm.
And that a lot comes from schooling, like just sit still, put your hands down.
Right.
And so I'd have to find really subtle ways of like fidgeting. And that was masking because what I really wanted to do is I wanted to like tap my fingers or like play with my rings or clack some things. Or if I had a fidget toy, just, make some noise and like out loud be doing something. But instead, I would arrange things on my desk and then rearrange things on my desk and then rearrange things on my desk. And I wouldn't
Mm.
get in trouble for that because I was just moving books around or like opening, like it looked like I was doing something for school. Or my favorite thing that I did in school was constantly doodle and swirls.
Yeah.
Constant. And it just looked like I was taking notes, but I wasn't. I was fidgeting. Because if I wasn't, I couldn't hear. I don't know how to explain that physiologically, but so those are
It
like some
makes
examples
perfect sense. It makes
of
perfect
for
sense
you
to
and
me.
for me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Um, okay. I think I'm gonna have to kind of like let that sink in
Marinate.
and like keep, I don't know, keep exploring it, I guess. I think that when you tell me like masking for pain,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And
that's probably the biggest one that chronic pain sufferers like tend to just like not express what's going on. Whereas
yeah.
like typically people when they're in pain would have a tell or talk about it or remove themselves from a situation. And like because ours is chronic, a lot of me and my chronic pain friends we're just like doing stuff in a lot of pain, but we
Yeah.
don't want to act like we're in a lot of pain because that's a whole other layer of exhausting. So we just
Mhm.
choose the other exhausting route, which is pretending like we're fine. And when I say
Oh,
that, I think about this video I saw, and I wish I could remember where, but there was a person that was talking about after an accident, they had searing, ongoing nerve pain that just never went away. And they were in this interview, and they're all put together and poised, and they look very fashionable and cute. And they're like having this whole conversation with this person. And the person like asked like about their pain, and she's like explaining the nerve pain. They're like, "My God, that sounds really horrible, but your pain's like okay right now." And she's like, "Well, no." He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "Oh no, I'm like always at an 8. Like it doesn't go away. It's nerve pain. Like the nerves are damaged, so they're just constantly sending out that signal." And the person looked absolutely bewildered. They're like, "Right now?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's just, uh-huh. Because that person couldn't imagine being in that much pain and holding it together like that. But for her, it was just like, well, this is my life now. And if I
mhm.
didn't learn how to like compartmentalize and know this is happening here, then she couldn't interact in any way. So she found ways to just be like, okay, well, yes, this is happening. However, I'm going to do this other thing. And the person was just absolutely bewildered. And like, mine's not that bad. But when she said it, I was like, I get you, sis. Like, I
Uh-huh.
got it. I know what you mean, where it's just like, yeah, you just wouldn't go anywhere or do anything if you gave it the wheel, so to speak, to steer. Because like I would
Yeah.
just sit in my house, and well, I love my house and I love sitting in it. I don't want to do that forever.
Yes, I agree. I mean, honestly, yeah, I wouldn't be if I let all of that stuff run my life. I wouldn't be sitting here doing this with you. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't sit still. I'm going like this the whole fucking time. And in my head, I have to let go of that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do a lot of there's a lot of like self-talk in there
Yep.
about like, Bridget, quit fucking moving around. Like just sit in your seat. And then I'm like, why? Why do I have to? I feel like I need to move. Why can't I move?
Yeah,
Like
that's the masking, unmasking dance.
and it's like it's all going on in here at the same
Mm-hmm. That's why we're tired,
time.
Bridget.
Well,
Because, some people don't think about that.
okay. No.
And that's like the unmasking bit, where it's like some people just let themselves move and don't think anything about it because they're unmasked
That
and happy.
okay, so that's the freedom. That's
Mm-hmm.
what we're yes, and I do understand that that's like I've come a very long way in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that stuff. Especially with like ADHD
Yeah.
things. Like that has given me a lot of freedom that I think maybe what I'm maybe having a hard time with is this thing of like before you know what it is or see it or know it or understand it, you don't know that it's a thing.
Yeah, because it's a
So
coping mechanism. You're just
yeah.
doing it on instinct because living in the society we do, we have learned through subtle or not so subtle ways that there's things about us that aren't okay. And we have
Mhm.
to hide them, mitigate them, do things differently. And that's like the insidiousness of masking. Like it was so interesting, like listening to certain autistic creators talk about it, where there's a phenomenon where sometimes when people understand their neurodivergence or get a diagnosis, that it seems like they get worse, quote unquote, somehow. Or
Mm-hmm.
people will talk about feeling like things that they used to do with ease, they can't anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
it's because you're rewiring how you're interacting with the world. You were able to do certain things before because you were burning so much energy on doing those things instead of like being attuned to yourself and taking good care of what you
Mm-hmm.
actually needed. Which I learned when I decided that I was going to pay more attention to my body and like what it needed. And my noise sensitivity, quote unquote, got a lot worse, but it didn't. It was always bad. I was just so tense and like white knuckling through everything that I had severe chronic pain and chronic headaches, and I was utterly exhausted where I would just pass out in the afternoon with no reason why. And it was because I was ignoring all these body signals that were like, the light's too bright, the noises are too like cacophonous, like you just need a quiet space. And I just couldn't hear those signals. So I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm sick all the time. I'm like, well, you're burning all your fuel every day just trying to pretend like your body isn't screaming inside. And then when I started like paying attention to it, I was just like, oh, this is what boundaries are. My boundaries are, today's not a day that I could go into a loud environment. I don't have the spoons for it. Or I don't want to sit under the fluorescent lighting. So I'm not going to go to that place. Like just like stuff like that felt really detrimental at first
Mm-hmm.
because I had all of these things in my head of I should be able to handle it. I should be able to do it. And then when I let go of that, I was like, oh, I feel a lot better. I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot more energy for things I actually want to do. I'm just well, like just overall happier, less irritable. And that made a huge difference. And that goes along with like just being around people that I can be myself with too. Because
Mm-hmm.
like when I was around folks that I had to mask for because I was rejected or made fun of or isolated because people didn't like my moods or my energy level or my fidgeting, then I found a lot more ease. And then I found the people that I didn't have to do that around. And those people actually, and I used to think that I didn't like people. I used to think I was such an
Mm-hmm.
introvert that I didn't want to be around people, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't true. I just
Mm-hmm.
couldn't be around people that were stifling who I was.
I mean, hard fucking same. Yeah. This was weren't we just talking about this some
Being people,
yeah,
people.
people.
Yeah, we didn't know
Uh
that.
yeah, look at us.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't yeah, fascinating. I one thing that popped up in my head as you were saying all that was I believe that you sent this to me like a reel or a short where it was two people and the one they were gonna go to two stores
Yeah.
and they were like, well, I want to go to this store first so then I can, I think, was it like so that I can be in TJ Maxx in the like in the home goods aisle or something
when they
when
have
I
when they had
yeah,
their meltdown, they wanted to
yeah,
be in the home goods section.
yeah,
Because I think it
yeah,
was grocery shopping and then, yeah, like a TJ Maxx or something about home goods, something
yeah,
like that. And the other person's like, well, why don't we do it the other way? And they're like, well, no, the meltdown's gonna happen. And
right.
if I want to choose where, and I
Yeah.
think it'll be more fun of the meltdown in the home goods section.
I just
And
think
it was
that is
so matter of
so,
fact.
yeah,
Like, I'm
that
gonna
to
do the
me,
two things and I'm
it's
gonna melt
like,
down.
there's so much like acceptance and freedom in that
Yeah.
I think about that all the time now when we have to go out and do chores or errands or go to places. I am thinking that, and I'm like trying to channel that energy and just letting it, yeah, be how it is, and choosing and letting that be okay.
Yeah, that reel was also really eye-opening to me because I think I kind of got stuck in the neurotypical perspective of taking care of myself to stop having the meltdowns or the
Mhm,
overwhelm or the whatever.
mhm.
And then I just like, it occurred to me of like, oh, this is another layer of the thing that there's nothing to fix. It's
Yeah.
just managing. This is how I am, and I'm always going to be like this. There's not going to be a magical formula to make it so that I never get overwhelmed or feel like I'm going to melt down.
Yeah, I just, wasn't there's something else recently on Instagram that I sent that was like a swipe, and it was dealing with this.
I don't remember.
Oh, it's slippery in my brain. But it was that idea of like, I don't know if this is entirely on, but of like getting better and having like a fully regulated nervous system or whatever that is, that like,
Oh,
you know,
that.
that
Yes, I do remember now. Thank you for giving me a little more context. Yeah, the idea, and I've seen other things about this too, and I saved them all. The idea that the goal isn't to have a perfectly regulated nervous system at all the time, because that would be not how the nervous system's built. Our nervous
Mhm.
system's built to be dysregulated because it's data. Like we have to adapt to the environment. So it's not about being regulated at all times. It's about learning how to get back to regulation after a dysregulation. Like, and not getting stuck in one or the other level, because having a completely regulated nervous system is just as dysfunctional as having a chronically dysregulated nervous system.
And I think that part of the message in that too was how harmful it is to preach about that you should,
Hmm.
aim for having a whatever quote unquote perfectly
If
regulated
I'm
nervous
remembering
system.
correctly, I think it was coming from a lens of like intersectionality, where it would be dangerous for people who are in chronic issues like, well, all the isms, ableism, racism, yada yada. Like, it would be dangerous for our nervous systems to say this is fine, we're fine,
Right. Yeah.
like, because there's no reason you should be regulated in a environment that is actively trying to harm you. That doesn't make
Yes.
any sense.
Yes.
So the idea of it's dangerous to preach like this regulated nervous system thing, some people aren't ever going to have that. Ingrid, do you mind? That's She decided she needed to stretch and she tried to rip my earbuds out while she was on her way. Um, but yeah, the idea that um, those things are not achievable for a lot of
Mhm.
populations, and
Mhm.
that's not their fault. That's not on them. Like, it's I don't know if the reel said that, but it's making me think of other things that I've read and thought about where it's like, this is an individual problem. This is a collective problem.
Yes.
And so this like false idea of making an individual responsible in some way for like a systemic issue is so dangerous and
Mhm.
not effective. Because, like,
Yeah.
yes, as individuals, we can make some adjustments, but it's not an either or. Our society loves telling individuals, well, if you just did A, B, and C, then it's like, no, no, no. It's not accurate.
And that's what we're here doing, tearing all the holes in all of this shit.
Yeah, that. Tear it to shreds. I mean, it's falling
It's
apart
just
anyway. We might as well.
right. Yeah.
It
We're
makes,
doing a good job.
yeah, we are. It makes me think of that Adrienne Marie Brown quote where she says that things aren't getting worse, they're getting uncovered. So
Mm.
we need to continue to pull back the veil and hold each other close.
Mhm.
And it makes me think like people talk about this idea of, yeah, that things like are getting so much worse. And I'm like, no, you're just becoming more aware
Right, right.
of what's always been here. And I like the idea of not just pulling back the veil, but just like rending it so no one can pull it back over their face because there'd just be holes. You don't get to be obscured from this horror show. Come
Right.
with the rest of us.
Yeah, we're already here, like, come on in.